Hi Year 6 and welcome to Friday's home learning, and today we're looking at our learning journey. And today we're going to be unpicking the text and characters and trying to understand what makes them so interesting. And to do that, we're going to look a lot at the vocabulary Jackie Morris uses in The Snow Leopard and see actually, how have we used this vocabulary or this kind of writing style before, and how we might be able to adopt that in our work. So the first thing I'm going to look at is, how does the author use adverbials to describe? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight some of the adverbials she uses in the text. So we've got from the beginning of time, high in the mountains, high above the hidden valley. Okay, so I've just highlighted three. I could put down in the valley there, or in her dreams is another good example. These are all fronted adverbials, or all what we call fronted adverbials. And how does the author, do you think, uses fronted adverbials? Well, first we know that adverbials add to or modify the verb, so they can tell us, as we looked at yesterday, how something happens, or where it happens, or when it happens. And what do adverbials do in this case? Have a think at home. That's right, adverbials are actually used, and I'm going to write it here, adverbials are used to describe the setting. They show us where it's happening. For example, high above the hidden valley. And also, when it's happening, it tells us as well. From the beginning of time. Or in her dreams. So, that's where. But from the beginning of time, it tells us when. So, adverbials are used often to describe, or they can show us where something is happening, or when they happen. And she uses it a lot for her setting. So the author uses it in her setting, doesn't she? She uses it to set the scene. And the author uses adverbials brilliantly here, and that's something that we might think about adding into our work, to modify and add to the verb and tell us where something happens, when it happens, maybe often how it happens. And those adverbials really make our writing more interesting. Then I want to look at the vivid vocabulary the author uses, and actually we're going to get rid of that because we're just going to pick two examples of some brilliant vivid vocabulary the author is using. So the first word I'm going to underline this in green, is I'm going to look at the word buttressed, crackling, and I'm also going to use the word dappled, because I think, that's a really interesting word, and there's probably a few words that you don't even know what they mean. Well, buttressed means covered. Crackling, we probably already know what that means, and dappled is actually the sort of black and white imagery we sometimes see, for example, when the sun is shining through the tree and you can see the light and the shadow next to each other, and it makes that dappled dark and light effect. So the author is using really vivid vocabulary, and what does she do it for? To create an amazing image in our mind. And if we do that, we can even see some examples. Some examples that we looked at included buttressed and dappled. So we can use really vivid vocabulary to help explain what we're trying to say, and also when we do this, it does something. It really, that description that we use helps our writing to be more detailed. So it creates that amazing image, and it helps our writing to be detailed. The next thing I want to look at, after our vivid vocabulary and the fronted adverbials we've already looked at, is I want to look at the kind of sentence types Jackie Morris uses. And if I'm looking at the kind of sentence types Jackie Morris uses, let's go up and just have a quick look. She uses two types of sentence types here, and I'm going to underline them. So the first one is down in the valley, the child slept. Now it's got a fronted adverbial in it, but what kind of sentence is that? That's right, it's a simple sentence. And then the other sentences in this are crisp snow sparkled in icy stars beneath her huge paws, and all the while she sang. And so Jackie Morris uses simple sentences. And she also uses compound sentences. And she uses them alternatively. And why do you think she does this? If I just use what is a compound sentence? Well, it's where we stick almost two sentences together with a conjunction, or two main clauses together with a conjunction. And why do you not think she just has really simple sentences? Rather, down in the valley the child slept, full stop. In her dreams she heard the ghost cat's secret music, full stop. She saw the shadow of her dappled coat, full stop. Why do we not do that? It's because our writing would become boring and not very interesting. So she uses simple sentences to grab our attention, like a short, snappy sentence to grab the reader's attention. And then she uses compound sentences to make her writing interesting and different. And she does this, and so she uses them alternatively, basically to make her writing more interesting differently. Because we can't write just compound sentences, because then our writing becomes long and doesn't grab our attention. But we can't just write simple sentences as well. So it's important to always use a range of sentences in writing. So we can use simple sentences, we can use compound, but really we want to use both together. And then finally, I'm going to underline the 5 senses, and we're going to think about where the author uses the 5 senses. And I'm going to go up and I'm going to underline some examples again, and I'm going to underline this one in purple. She heard the ghost cat's secret music and saw the shadow of her dappled coat. So, how does the author use the 5 senses? She uses it so we can relate to our characters and imagine ourselves as them. So we're imagining ourselves as the little girl, hearing the noise or seeing what she sees. And that is why we use the 5 senses. And she also uses it to describe what is happening in greater detail. And part of this is all about that imagery we talked about. And we talked about how actually if we use the 5 senses, it helps create that amazing image in our mind because we imagine we are the characters. So what I want you to do today is I want you to go away and I want you to create what you need to do is you need to create this cross that I've put here, and in it you're going to have 5 senses, fronted adverbials, vivid vocabulary and sentence types, and they're going to be your 4 sections in each section of your cross. So I've got 1 here, 2 here, 3 here and 4 here. And in it you're going to tell me a bit about each of those things. So why we use the 5 senses, or why we use fronted adverbials, or why we use vivid vocabulary, or why we use different sentence types. And then you're going to tell me what maybe the 5 senses are. or why we can use fronted adverbials to discuss setting, or why we use vivid vocabulary, and how, and maybe some examples. And also, you might tell me not just the two different sentence types that you could use, but you could also tell me the third sentence type you could use, and you could tell me why we use them. So in each section, I want you to write what we've learned today about the 5 senses, fronted adverbials, vivid vocabulary, and different sentence types. So you need to go away in your book, and you can use my starters like I have here to create this page in your book. And you're going to need a cross, and then each section is going to be on a different thing that we've discussed today. Good luck, and don't forget to upload your work to Class Dojo.